Great. So you're already recording, right?
I just hit record again. Yep.
Perfect. So thank you for having us, Brad. I'm excited to share this information with you and everyone else on the line about really setting yourself apart during your job search. So it's how to stand out from all of the other people out there. I know that your time is precious, and so I appreciate you all making it a priority to be with us today. So one thing about me, I like to start off with quotes. Here is one. All our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them. And that is by Walt Disney. So we know that Walt Disney, he had a vision for what he wanted to create. And it was actually pretty difficult for him because he didn't have all of the technology that we have today. He obviously didn't let that stop him from creating, the worlds that he created. So when we think about our job search, courage is also a vital component of that. We are putting ourselves out there to be critiqued, judged, and possibly rejected. So an effective job search strategy requires courage as well. So if you're not seeing the results that you want instantly with the job search, really having that courage to keep going, even when you're not seeing it in reality yet, is very important. And that's part of what separates people who are successful from people who aren't. Also, it's the courage to try something new. Maybe you're going into a new career or a new way of doing things. So I want you all to keep this idea of courage in the back of your mind as we go through the presentation today. All right, so you are in the right place if you want to understand the main generations in the workforce and how they think. Learning what generational stereotypes are and how to set yourself apart, very important in the workplace. Also, finding out the 3 biggest challenges that people face during their job search and how to overcome them. And then also, if you just want to be a fly on the wall, right? You want to just listen in, and maybe you're planning for your future career growth or pivot and development in some way. That is fine too. At the end, I'll also provide more information on how you can put this all together to land your dream job or really work through some type of job search shift that you might have going on. So let's jump right in. Who we are. So as Brad mentioned, I'm Portia Parker Griffin. I'm founder and CEO of Fly High Coaching. The short end of it is for the last 7 years, we've been really focused on helping professionals and executives find their ideal career, generate an awesome income, and create a life they love through business and career coaching. You can see some of our core competencies down there at the bottom. We do a lot of career coaching, job search strategy, resume and LinkedIn profile writing. We help with interview coaching and then also entrepreneurship. That photo off to the right was me delivering a keynote speech. I'm kind of in the top left corner there. You might be able to see me walking around. So I do some speaking at events as well. But let's talk about the big picture. For those of you with finance backgrounds or that just perhaps talk to your financial advisor regularly, you may already know that we are in the midst of what they are calling the greater wealth transfer. So this is where between 30 to $68 trillion will be transferred between generations. This transfer will obviously have a large impact on the US economy, and it's going to affect every industry out there. It really symbolizes a major shift in the workforce. But if we were to put this simply, boil it down, a large group of people are reaching retirement, and a younger group of people will be filling their roles in the workforce. And so that's pretty much what the greater wealth transfer is about from, a workplace perspective. All right, so the generations today. One thing that you will see if you do a lot of research on generations is that the beginning and the ending years of a generation can fluctuate a little bit, just depending on the source that you're using. I generally use the Pew Research Center, which is the chart that you see here. And talking about generations in the workforce has become a popular thing for a lot of reasons. The primary generations in the workforce are the middle three that you see there. So kind of starting with that teal, it's the baby boomers, born roughly from 1946 to 1964. Then we've got Gen Xers, born from 1965 to 1980. Then we have the millennials in the gold. They're born roughly from 1981 to 1996. And then also on the outskirts here, to the far left, we've got the silent generation, or traditionalists is sometimes what they're called. So those people would have been my grandparents. I think about 2% of the population today in the workforce is in the silent generation. So I doubt we'll have anyone, watching the recording from that generation. And then off to the far right, we've got Generation Z, which were born after 1997. So some of the recent college grads and seniors and juniors are in Gen Z. So when it comes to generations and researchers who study generations, they usually look at quite a few things. Pop culture and technology are generally some of the largest influencers to how people in a generational group tend to think. So I like this chart here. It was actually through an Australian research publication, but they have some US information on here as well that I think is really cool. But if you're thinking about a generation, iconic technology, that kind of second row, is something that really influences people in a certain group. So for baby boomers, that was the onset of the television. For Gen Xers, it was the personal computer. They've got millennials as Gen Y here. It's really the internet. You can also look at some of the music, the TV and the movies, and really start to get an idea about, the pop culture of a generation. So that's going to lead us to our first poll question, Brad. And so that is just so we can kind of see who we have on the line today. What generation are you in? Are you a boomer, a Gen Xer, a millennial, or in Gen Z? So we'll just take a few minutes to answer that first poll question. All right, looks like we've got a couple of people who have already voted.
And Portia, I'm sorry, it looks like I actually launched all the questions at once. So we think we've got 3 questions to answer. My fault on that end.
No worries. Well, we might have our answers ahead of time, right? Okay, so do you want to give it a couple more seconds? I guess it looks like 6 out of 7 maybe have voted for number 1.
Yeah, number 1 is pretty much, there we go. We're getting a couple more responses here.
There we go.
Are you able to see? Do I need to hit?
Can.
Okay.
I can see it. It looks like we've got 20% in Generation X, 60% in the millennial generation, and 20% in Generation Z. So thank you for putting that up, Brad. It's just to help us get an idea of who's on the call today and how we can focus our time. Something else that I didn't mention at the beginning, but for questions, we can, you guys can go ahead and type those into the chat and we can answer them at the end. If you guys have any questions that come up, I've saved some time for that. All right. So I see in poll, Brad, I don't know if you want to click that, but I'll just go ahead and move on to the next slide. Oh, wait, I guess I have to press.
Would you like me to share the results?
Yeah,
or should we wait till
You can share results, that's
All
fine.
right.
Great. So I think everyone can see those now. All right. So I think it's got to be stop sharing before I can move forward to the next slide.
All right, I stopped sharing. Can you move on now?
Okay. Maybe I need to click out of it. All right, I just clicked out of it on my screen. Perfect. There we go. So let's bring on the baby boomers. It didn't seem like we had any boomers on the call, but maybe someone will show up on the recording. And it's important to know about the main generations in the workforce, because when we talk about setting ourselves apart towards the end, knowing all of this information will help us do that. So the boomers, as I mentioned before, were born roughly between 1946 and 1964. Some general characteristics about boomers is that they had a strong work ethic, a strong respect for hierarchies within organizations, and then also that they are very goal-driven. Boomers make up about 21.2% of the US population. That's approximately 0.6 million people. When we were talking about the greater wealth transfer earlier, a lot of that has to do with the 10,000 boomers that are reaching retirement age every day. It's a huge number of people, a huge population. Many of our clients who are baby boomers want to remain active and contribute to society. I hear this a lot. A lot of them tell me that they're just not interested in stopping work. They want to keep learning, keep growing, and all of that. So there's a group of boomers that really want to continue to work for fulfillment. But also there's a group of boomers that just simply crunch the numbers and decide that they really financially can't afford to retire. So that's part of the reason why we still have a lot of boomers in the workforce right now. So some boomer stereotypes. So these are some generalizations that are kind of thrown out there about boomers. The first is that they blindly trust organizations and established processes. So many boomers were very loyal to organizations, working for companies for 20 and 30 years. But unfortunately, in some instances, those organizations were not doing the right thing. There are quite a few, stories that we can think of organizations stealing pensions. We can think about the Enron scandal from a couple of decades ago-ish. Instances like that where boomers had really put a lot of their trust in these organizations that failed them in some way or another. Also, another stereotype about boomers is that they're not tech savvy. And that they are judgmental of others. So that's the kind of, back in my day, we did it this way. I don't understand why you would want to do X, Y, and Z. Also, that they are not innovative. A lot of boomers in the workforce have gotten kind of the label of sticking with that tried and true way of doing things, not necessarily looking for easier or faster, perhaps more profitable ways of doing things. So when we have clients who are boomers, to help them kind of get past these stereotypes that they might experience out there as they're applying for jobs or just in the workplace, we talk a bit about helping them to prevent ageism. So there are quite a few ways to do it, but one of the quickest is to make sure that you don't have graduation years on your resume or on your LinkedIn profile. It's great that you graduated from college in 1977, but you don't want that on the resume. Also, boomers can emphasize their loyalty and then mention how, they've stayed current with technology, so people don't just, assume that they don't know what's going on with software that it would be hard for them to pick up. So let's get to know Gen X. Gen Xers were born roughly between 1965 and 1980. Some characteristics of Gen Xers is that they can be seen as independent, self-reliant, and valuing work-life balance and freedom. Gen Xers make up 19.9% of the population in the US, so it's approximately 65.2 million people. Many of our clients who are Gen Xers see themselves as being in their prime earning years, is what I've heard. So they can be very focused on their career and planning to achieve certain milestones within the next 10 years or so. So they consider themselves to be mid-career or perhaps late career, just depending on their own personal kind of career map. Some Gen X stereotypes. So some observations in the workplace that people have used to kind of create some labels, for lack of a better word, about Gen X. So they can be lone rangers who do not collaborate. Perhaps they keep all of the information to themselves or hoard resources for just themselves and their projects. Another stereotype is that they are overly skeptical about processes in general and definitely new things. Also that they're not passionate and engaged with what they're doing. Just doing what it takes to get by. So this is the kind of clocking in and clocking out, collecting a paycheck kind of, thought. Also that Gen Xers might be pessimistic. So shooting down ideas before they've even been tried and things like that. So for our clients who are Gen Xers, we talk a lot about how they can demonstrate their leadership skills and their collaborative skills. So projects that they worked on with, cross-functional teams or other large groups of people that they were able to contribute to that were successful. And the key is kind of working that into conversation naturally, ideally, within that interview. All right, so let's meet the millennials. Millennials were born roughly between 1981 and 1996. Some characteristics of millennials is that they are confident, tech savvy, and entrepreneurial. Millennials make up about 22% of the US population. So that's over 72 million people. Millennials recently surpassed baby boomers as the largest adult generation. And there's been a lot of talk about millennials in the last, I'd say, 3 to 5 years. And for the reasons that are mentioned in that third bullet point. Millennials are projected to make up 75% of the workforce by 2025. So a lot of organizations are really thinking about millennials. Also, millennials are the most educated generation, in that previous generations didn't have as much experience in terms of going to colleges or universities. So millennial stereotypes. These are all over the internet, and most people have heard some of these. One, it's that, millennials are entitled and self-focused, so having a me first mentality. Also, a lot of people have said they think millennials are lazy and don't really follow through with their commitments. There's the idea that millennials are disloyal and job hoppers. And then also some people have critiqued millennials and said that they have poor communication skills with others, really just focusing on technology and their phone and not really being present in person. So for our clients who are millennials, we talk about any brief, job positions that they might have held or gaps in employment and how to position those, not only on their resume, but also during an interview, if someone were to ask you about certain things like that. Also, it's about looking for past experiences to really highlight that show your dedication to a project or an organization. And then also, obviously focusing on in-person communication skills and how you present yourself on camera a lot of times now because of virtual interviews, but also in person. So introducing Gen Z here. So Gen Z, these individuals were born roughly between 1997 and 2012. They currently make up 20.5% of the US population. What's interesting about Gen Z is that they are more ethnically diverse than previous generations in the US. Gen Zers are considered to be the first true digital natives. Okay, so most people in Gen Z have little to no memory of the world prior to smartphones, not understanding the world prior to the internet. So really having that emphasis on technology and just assuming that it's been there to help. Also, Gen Zers tend to value independence and individuality. So some Gen Z stereotypes. When it comes to Gen Z, a lot of people have noted that they are not as focused as other generations. There's actually some research on this. I can't remember the source, but I was reading a study and they were saying that Gen Zers actually have shorter attention spans than people in previous generations as a whole, of course, just as a group. Also, that Gen Zers multitask too much, leading to lower levels of productivity. Then there's that they are addicted to technology because they've just been used to it. And then also here we have the job hopper stereotype again that showed up for millennials. Also with Gen Zers, a lot of recruiters have noted that they just ghost them, right? So they might apply, have an interview, and then just never hear back. Not say, no, I'm not interested, or accept another opportunity, just nothing. So these are some stereotypes of Gen Z. When we have clients who are Gen Zers, really the main thing, because generally most Gen Zers are pretty early in their career, it's to make a point to connect with their interviewer, connect with their colleagues and the people that they work with. One challenge I gave to a Gen Zer was to make it a point not to look at their phone after they arrive to the interview. Just make sure that they're present, observing everyone that's kind of all around them and taking in the experience of the interview. So that leads us to the second poll question, Brad, and I think we've kind of answered some of this already. And this question was, are you actively looking for a new job? Yes or no? And I believe that it was overwhelmingly yes. I can't remember the exact number.
Yeah, it was 80% of attendees are looking for a job.
All right. So that helps us as we move forward to think about the job search. So on to the job search. I'm sure that you all have some thoughts about the current job market based on what you've seen and what you've experienced. With the onset of COVID-19, in general, for most geographical job markets, things have gotten exponentially more competitive, is what I say. But let's take a look at the data. What's interesting is that unemployment rose higher in 3 months of COVID-19 than it did in 2 years of the Great Recession. So some millennials like myself were graduating from college in the middle of the Great Recession. And that was tough. And we can see that things are even more intense than then. Unemployment rates of younger Gen Z workers far exceeded that of other generations during this pandemic. It was estimated that over 33 million Americans lost their job during the pandemic. I think they were including furloughed employees in that number as well. And then 42% of the recent layoffs in the pandemic are projected to result in permanent job losses. So we know that, some things have just fundamentally changed. And so that's a projection that I saw out there from the University of Chicago. And 43% of laid off workers say the outbreak has been a serious source of stress in their life. So when you are thinking about a job search right now, some of the number one questions that I've gotten from clients and prospective clients and just people that found out I was a career coach and wanted to ask me questions were, things like, is it even worth looking for a job right now? What kind of strategy should I be using? And a lot of it's going to depend on your unique situation, your unique job market. I do have a free resource at the end that I can provide with more information, but I think the main gist here is that you want to research your own local area and your industry, because that's going to make a big difference in terms of, some of the levels of competition that you're going to see right now. All right, so I thought this chart was really interesting because it really digs kind of deep. Baby boomers are represented by the baby blue dots that you'll see on the screen. Gen Xers are in the lime green, and millennials are in orange on this chart. So they're looking at differences in terms of preferences of what's extremely important when applying for a job. What was interesting is that boomers rated quality of manager, quality of management, and overall compensation as important and higher than the other generations that they sampled here. And then millennials rated the opportunity to learn and grow, interest in the type of work, and opportunities for advancement higher than the other generations. And then Gen Xers didn't rate any area that they, surveyed higher than any of the other generations here. So they were kind of in the middle, or you'll see at the end in terms of less emphasis on that area. So I'm sure that all of you on the line kind of have thoughts about what's important to you when you're applying for a job. I think it's just kind of interesting to see as a group, what people are prioritizing. So let's talk about what might be holding you back from getting interviews and job offers. I call these the 3 common mistakes or pitfalls that people fall into that can negatively affect their results. All right, so number 3. They have outdated or underwhelming professional branding. So this is when you haven't addressed the importance of your resume, your cover letter, and your LinkedIn profile. Now, maybe you haven't looked at these things because you haven't been on the open job market in a while, but these items are very important. Sometimes when I work with baby boomers, they tell me, I've been in a job for the last 20 years or 30 years. I haven't even needed a resume. So they're completely starting from scratch sometimes in terms of even thinking about this. Also, for our clients who are artists or writers, having a work sample portfolio is really important, and it's something that you want to put a lot of thought into. That might be on your website online. There are other online publications where writers and artists can put up, some of their work, but really thinking about these things is significant. So how to set yourself apart, right? How to make sure that this is not, a pitfall for you, right? Many people say, hey, I'm a good writer. I can write my own resume. Nowadays, everything is done with technology. 10 years ago, you could write your own resume, apply somewhere, and people were probably looking at it and reading it. Nowadays, there's software technology, and it's called ATS for short, or applicant tracking systems. And if you're applying online, we'll say on Indeed, Glassdoor, LinkedIn, or an organization's website directly, if they're a mid-sized organization or larger, odds are they're using some type of software technology that screening resumes just looking for the right keywords in the right frequency to deem that you're a good fit for the position. If it does not find those keywords, then it gives your resume a quote unquote bad score and filters you out of the process. And when it filters you out of the process, your resume is usually never even seen by a human being. Sometimes people get the automatic thanks but no thanks email. I've had some people tell me, yeah, I applied and in 10 minutes, I got this automatic email at 9:00 at night that said, thank you, but you're not a fit, basically. So that means obviously so there's some software technology screening them out. So it's really important to be focused on, your job targets, but also really knowing the keywords that just need to be there to move through the software technology. So that's number one. Also, having an updated professional LinkedIn profile. One interesting stat from LinkedIn directly is that over 90% of recruiters are checking you out on LinkedIn after they review your resume, but before they decide to interview you. So they're using LinkedIn as a tiebreaker of sorts between candidates. They're generally looking for some alignment between the resume and the LinkedIn profile. So what you have up and out there is very, very important. Also, your LinkedIn, a lot of times people ask me, well, what's the most important part of LinkedIn? And that's generally the about section. It used to be called the summary. Over 80% of people are looking at that about section and then making a determination. So do they want to keep reading your profile? Do they want to send you a message? Do they want to click away? So if it's one thing about LinkedIn, you really want to have a strong about section. Also, when you think about all of your documents, your cover letter, your resume, your LinkedIn profile, do they demonstrate your value in less than 10 seconds? Because this is another dirty little secret. And some of the detail-oriented people out there are shocked to hear this, but a lot of recruiters are not reading your resume word for word. Some of them aren't really ever reading it word for word, and that's kind of shocking. What they're doing is they're glancing at your resume, they're giving it generally 5 to 10 seconds and deciding, does it go in the yes pile or does it go in the no pile? And the yes pile, then they might go check out your LinkedIn profile, think about interviewing you. And the no pile, it's just a no. So you've really got to get the highlights in terms of, the impact and the value that you can bring on that resume, very prominent within 10 seconds. All right. Number 2, in terms of common mistakes, you don't have a job search strategy. So this is when you are doing a few things, different things sporadically. You might be using various tactics that change, right? Your whole approach changes. Maybe the tactics that you use change from week to week or month to month. This can be a major source of stress. A lot of my clients who are baby boomers and some who are Gen Xers too have told me that, well, Portia, the last time I looked for a job, it was in the classified section of a newspaper. So they don't really know what to do in terms of today, how to generate some activity and really get more interviews faster. This could also look like someone who says, hey, I was online on job sites and I applied for jobs for like 2 or 3 weeks and then I didn't hear back. So I stopped. And then I, turned on my LinkedIn settings to let recruiters know I was open for, jobs. And then in 2 or 3 weeks, I didn't really hear much back from that. So then I started, doing some online networking or, just working through a professional association. And they're just kind of spinning, doing different things and changing their focus all of the time. So how to set yourself apart here? You want to have a schedule of what to do and when to do it. So for some people, that's their calendar. Some people can kind of remember time of day or use their phone, but you really want to have something that you will stick to because that helps you maintain consistency and continue taking action. Also, now, we talked a little bit about COVID-19 and the pandemic, but a lot of the timelines for organizations are completely up in the air, and it has nothing to do with you. I literally last week got an email from a contact of mine, and he referred his niece, who had recently graduated college, so she'd be a Gen Zer, to us a few months ago. And she had just gotten a job, but she had applied 3 months earlier, interviewed, and then the company went radio silent. So she could have, been down about herself and all of that, but she wasn't. And the company was just, getting their ducks in a row and everything lined up. And they gave her a call at the blue. But she was still consistently taking action, right? She was following up with people. That's another thing. Follow up with everyone, interviewers, recruiters, and contacts. So when I say that, I know that this can be tough. And this goes back to that courage that we were talking about earlier. Because, you might interview and not hear back from someone. You might talk to a recruiter and they don't get back to you as well. And, sometimes people feel as though they're being rejected, or they actually are being rejected in some cases for a position. But you've just got to remember that you're really looking for that right fit. So it's probably, for most people, one job. Some people are looking for 2 jobs, but not everything out there is going to be a fit. So you really want to cast a wide net here in terms of jobs that you're applying for, but also not take things too personally if you're not hearing back or you think, things are going really slow. All right, so number 1, you don't have support. So this is when you have the best intentions of doing the tasks that are needed and taking action. But I know that everyone on the call has a life, right? Everyone has other things to do. You might have a full-time job while you're looking for another job. And if you don't, then a lot of people will tell you that looking for a job feels like a full-time job. So in either way, I'm sure you're very busy, because most people are. You've got family members, you've got friends that you want to spend time with, and other just obligations that you have going on. So what happens to a lot of people here is that they might tell people, hey, I'm looking for a job and I'm applying. And then someone says, well, hey, haven't you been applying for a month? You don't have anything yet? I think you should take a break. It's just, there's so much going on. Why don't you just take a break? And a lot of people go on what I call a job search hiatus for weeks or months. And so, they're thinking that they want another job. They maybe have, applied for a couple weeks or a month, and then they've stopped and it's still on their mind, but they're not seeing progress and they're feeling frustrated. And so they start feeling stuck, right? Like they'll never land anything. And so a lot of this happens when you don't have support. So setting yourself apart here. Cultivate a strong support system of coaches, mentors, and other advisors. Sometimes, depending on the situation, there might be a career counselor at your university that could also be part of your support system. But the key is other professionals don't have an agenda for you. Your family members, your friends, they may love you, but they're biased in terms of how they see you and what they think, your cap, so to speak, is in terms of how far you can go or what type of job you should be doing or how much money you can be making. They generally kind of have their own thoughts about that. And so that might not be in alignment with kind of how you see yourself and what you want to do in your career. One thing I hear a lot of is, people say, well, I talked to, my mom or my dad or my cousin, whomever, family member, and they say, oh, my job is great. And, they don't understand why I would want to have another job, because I make X amount of money. But they don't know that you haven't slept in weeks and that you're stressed out and you dread going to work every day. So they can love you, but really not have that same vision for you that you have for yourself. So that's to the note about having a strong support system. Also, you want to remove or decrease your amount of time with negative people and influences. So this is what I call the dream killers, right? We know who those people are. They might even be family members sometimes. These people tell you to kind of be more realistic, or I don't know anyone who does that kind of job, or I don't know anyone who makes that amount of money, or I don't, whatever that may be. And they're imposing that on you. So you definitely want to be mindful of that. And then putting systems in place to help keep you on track and help you feel supported. So again, that might be your calendar. It might be some other type of, technology or system that you use to really help you with that. So poll question number 3, and I didn't quite see the results of this one because it was kind of cut off for me, Brad. I need to scroll down.
All right. I can kind of give you an update here. Which of these challenges is the most difficult for you? Outdated, underwhelming professional branding. 60% of you chose that option. You don't have a job search strategy. 40% of you chose that option. And you don't have support. No one chose that option, which is good.
Yeah, that is great. That is great. That everyone feels supported. So just, thinking about the other 2 areas, let me see if I can pop that up. Okay. All right. So hold on. It's not, there we go. So at this point, sometimes when I'm giving this presentation or just talking to someone about, a job search and the different aspects that we've already covered, they say, this sounds like a lot. It does, because it is a lot. I cannot, say that it isn't. But there is a simple way to put all of this together. But we've got to be realistic about things, right? So it is going to take work on your part to, get clear on the jobs that you're targeting. Also to come up with a strategy that works for you. It's going to also take time, right? So you've got to have that dedication to stick to a schedule or some system that works for you in terms of actually putting the strategy in place. And then it's also about having access to the right resources. So if you do need support around helping with your professional branding or some other aspect of this whole process, having access to those resources are important. All right. So I want to talk about some case studies because I think it's always a good idea to look at how other people do things and kind of dissect it and see how it can work for you, right? So here is a baby boomer case study for you all. So Robert is an IT executive, and he had a 20-year military career, very successful. And then he worked for another 20 years at a very large Fortune 50 organization. And so when he was on the job market earlier this year, he was very apprehensive about the job search. So he fell into that category of boomers I was telling you guys about, where, he said, hey, I've never really had to look for a job except for 20 years ago, and everything is different. And, he wasn't super confident in his professional branding documents, like his resume and his LinkedIn profile. And so what we did together is we set up a job search strategy that would work for him. And that's something else that's going to be different for every person. So a lot of times people think, well, oh, I can just do what someone else did. You might be able to if that person is in a similar job market, similar field, but sometimes you can't just do what you see in a blog post on the internet. And I sometimes talk to people who tell me that they've been doing things and applying for 100 jobs in 6 months and just not getting that feedback. So you've really got to think about what's going to work for you. So we helped him with all of that. And Robert, he's a super student. So he put everything into play and in 2 weeks landed something. But it's just a testament to kind of really putting a whole strategy together. A Gen Xer case study that I want to share with you. Tana. So Tana is brilliant. I think Robert's brilliant too. But Tana was actually working on completing her PhD when we worked together. And it was like her 4th or 5th degree. I can't remember which one. But she was having trouble really putting everything in her resume in a cohesive way. And so this comes up a lot for people in different instances. But she had a 7-page resume and it was way too long. So remember we were talking about that, 5 to 10 seconds. Most resumes, depending on where you are in your career, are 1 to 2 pages. And then if you are in certain industries or, much later in your career, sometimes a 3-page resume you can go for, but 7 pages is way too long. So we helped her with that. And she's also a military veteran. So she wanted to highlight her transferable skills for the jobs that she was currently targeting. So there was a lot in that with Tana. Once again, she also is a super student. So she put all of this into action. She also moved states while doing that. And so she landed a director level position in less than 90 days, which is definitely a feat there. Both clients, so Tana and Robert that I mentioned before, really put in the time and the work that I mentioned before to get results quickly. Another question that people ask a lot is, what's the standard time frame that it takes somebody to get a job? Once again, that's going to vary, but in general, for most professionals, 3 to 9 months is kind of what people tend to see. Now that's without any other kind of factors out there. Also, if you're targeting director level and more executive type of positions, generally those job searches can take longer. It's not uncommon for like executive job searches to sometimes take over a year or a couple of years. So just to give you an idea of, how to put things together in terms of the strategy and the documents. So in that I said, this is a lot. I'm sure that some of you are listening to this and thinking that, now is the time where you really want to focus on your own job search. In terms of, the professional branding, the strategy that you're looking for. So I have opened up my schedule for 3 complimentary, completely free Vision of Success sessions. So they're 20 minutes. And for 3 of you who might want to hop on the line and talk about how all of this applies to you specifically, we can do that. During the session, some common things that we talk about are here. You'll see towards the bottom. Discovering what could be unconsciously sabotaging your success, talking about that plan, the strategy that we've been referring to, and then also getting into action. So sometimes those of us who have a degree of some kind, a lot of times we're academics. We think, oh, I know all of this in my head, right? Intellectually, I know this stuff, but are you doing it? Right? Is it now in your life and you're taking action on it, right? Because just the knowledge in your brain and not doing anything with it is not going to get you results either. So we talk a bit about action there too. So if that is something that you're interested in, you can see at the bottom here, you can just send us an email to admin@fly-highcoaching.com. So it's admin@fly-highcoaching.com. The other thing that I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the current job market, COVID-19, the pandemic, I started putting together a list of questions because I was getting so many questions. Is it worth looking for a job? Where are the best places to look? What should I be doing right now? All of those sorts of things. And so I put all of that together into what is called the Smart Job Seekers Guide to Achieving Success During the Pandemic. So this is completely free. I provided it as a resource to my clients who were looking for jobs and interested. So I would obviously want to share that with you guys as well. So if you are interested in that Job Seekers Guide, you can just sign up. Off to the left, you'll see it's just fly-highcoaching.com/courses. And then when you scroll to the bottom, you'll see the Job Seekers Guide for free. All right. So if you have similar questions about the pandemic, this is where I recommend that you go. I think I can't remember if it's 17 pages or 11 pages. It's a good amount to kind of look through and get some answers. All right, so I like to close with quotes as well. So productivity is never an accident. It is always the result of a commitment to excellence, intelligent planning, and focused effort. There's a lot in there. And I really like this quote because it alludes to a lot of what we talked about today. So, right, that commitment to excellence, showing up, on your resume, but also in an interview in a way to really highlight what you have to offer and your background. The intelligent planning. We talked about systems. We talked about scheduling, kind of staying on track with a job search strategy already. And then focused effort. Actually taking the action to do what you said that you were going to do. And putting an effort into it. So I really like that quote by Paul Meyer and wanted to share it because I think it really kind of ties what we've been talking about together. So with that, here is my contact information. I know sometimes people think of questions after the webinar. I think we've got a few minutes for some questions, Brad, if there are some in the chat that we can talk about, but you guys have my phone number, you've got an email address and our website. I have really appreciated you all and thank you for showing up and being present during this webinar. I know that there are many other places that you could be right now and you have taken some time to spend it here with us. So thank you.
Thank you, Portia. Does anyone have any questions for Portia? Feel free to take yourself off mute or either put them in the group chat box. And if no questions, Portia, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. And thank you to everyone for joining. You can see her contact information there. And we will make this recording available on via email. So I will be sending it out to participants. And thanks again so much for your time and enjoy the rest of the day. We'll see you all later.
Thanks, Brad.
Take care.